FYF Sports, man, it's Lamont here. We back with another podcast episode today. As you can see by the title, we're going to be talking about Michael Porter Jr. We're going to be bringing you the truth about this player. We're going to break down the stats. We're going to break down the video. We're going to get to the truth of the matter. Why is Mike Malone not using this guy the way fans think that he should be? You know, we're going to get to all of that in a minute. Before we get started with the video, make sure you guys, again, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell to the video if you haven't done so already. Again, that's the only way you can stay actively engaged with everything that we have to come for this channel, especially our live debates. We're going to start going live game 1 of the NBA Finals. Game 1 of the NBA Finals, we're going to be going live 2 hours before the game. You're going to make sure that you tune in for those live debates. I see you guys in the comments. You guys, if you got questions, concerns, if you want to try to roast me, if you want to try to debate me, that's going to be your opportunity to do so in the live debates. The only way you can be eligible to win prizes, because every debate that we have, we're going to have a winner. The only way you're eligible for those cash prizes for the day, you got to be a member of our Facebook group, NBA GOAT Talk. All right. So again, if you're not eligible to win prizes and you do good that day and you don't win, I'm just telling you what you need to do to be eligible to win those prizes. All right. So again, like, comment, subscribe, join the Facebook group. But today, man, we got to get on this topic right here. I've seen a number of videos from fans, because again, we don't, we like to separate ourselves from fans. We're students of the game over here. We study the game, from a real basketball perspective. We take emotions out of it. We don't get caught up in what we call recency bias. All right. Now, I've seen a number of people get caught up in recency bias. We got caught up in recency bias with Damian Lillard when he had his stretch of great games towards the end of the bubble seeding games, the play-in game. But when the playoffs came, when teams were able to key in on what that Blazer team does best, when they were able to lock in and take away some of your best options, things start to come to light in those playoffs games. The game is much different. We saw the same thing with the Los Angeles Clippers. We saw Paul George have flashes, a game here, a game there. Everybody thought Paul George was back after he struggled in some of the bubble games. He wasn't really back. Again, recency bias. We allow one game to change our entire perception of a player's overall skill set. I've been, again, with Damian Lillard, I've always told the truth about my favorite team, my favorite player. They struggled defensively. That carried into the playoffs. That's why they're not in the playoffs. When we look at the Clippers, I spoke about time and time again, I spoke about how they were lackluster on defense. Kawhi Leonard's not as good as what we think he is defensively. Off ball, he's atrocious. He stands around. That team lacks discipline. And what happened? They allowed the Denver Nugget team to come back 3-1 from a 3-1 deficit and take them out the playoffs. We have a similar situation here with Michael Porter Jr. This is a guy here who early into the bubble put up great numbers. All right, now we're talking about a guy, man. This guy has his player build. His player build, his playing style. He has everything that you want in a player. We're talking about a 22-year-old, 6'10" forward who can play. He can play 4 positions on the court offensively. All right. Now he was a 14th pick overall out of the draft. Should have been in that lottery. Had it not been for some concerns with some injuries. He had an injury, a back injury in college that took him out for an entire year of college basketball. He goes into the draft. That same back injury is lingering. He's out for an entire year of NBA basketball as soon as he gets drafted to the Denver Nuggets. So he's still a raw talent with a lot of potential. Again, any player who's projected to go into the lottery, you have a decent amount of potential. And with his player build, the Denver Nuggets want to develop him the right way. You don't want to thrust him in too soon. You want to allow him to learn organically and naturally. And that's what you have to do with a player like this. Now, he's had flashes in the bubble. The real question is, why has Mike Malone been so up and down with his minutes for Michael Porter Jr.? For me, he has some glaring weaknesses offensively and defensively that really put his team at a disadvantage if you allow him to stay in the game too long. And so what we're going to do is, instead of just talking about it, we're going to go to video and we're going to look at some of the advanced stats to really break down what's going on the court with Michael Porter Jr. and why his minutes are so up and down. Also, and then at the end of the day, we just have to come to the conclusion. We're going to break down why Mike Malone cannot start this guy nor play this guy high minutes, especially when you got savvy veterans on your bench who can get the job done, who've had playoff experience and know how to navigate through those types of games when teams know what you're doing and you have to make adjustments on the fly. Now we're going to look at a series of plays here where Michael Porter Jr. here is struggling with ball screens. Right there, basic ball screen, he's not able to go over. Another basic ball screen right here. We're going to pause the video. Now, I want you to look at this pick and roll action going on right here. So what we know, the one thing that we know is when we look at Plumlee, look at where Plumlee is. Plumlee is playing something called drop coverage. He's dropped down. Whenever you play drop coverage, it's the guard's responsibility to immediately do what? Immediately fight over the screen, chase and recover. Because again, Joe Ingles not going to make a straight line drive to the basket. Why? Because drop coverage is sitting right there protecting the rim. He's not going to be able to drive right into Plumlee and score a layup. So the rim is protected here. What we need, what the Denver Nuggets need, is they need that effort. They need that additional effort from Michael Porter Jr. on this particular play to do what? All you have to do is fight over the screen. And I want you guys to watch how he fights over the screen. And because he doesn't give max effort, he allows Joe Ingles to do what he wants on the court. We're just going to go ahead and play it. Now, look at the effort here. Look at the effort here. Now, Plumlee's doing his job because in drop coverage, we know that Rudy Gobert is going to roll to the rim. He has the roll to the rim. On top of the fact that Rudy Gobert is not a strong three-point shooter, so Plumlee doesn't have to worry about popping out to the three-point line to guard a Rudy Gobert. It's Michael Porter Jr.'s job to fight over that screen. And in this particular play, he did not do a very good job of, and he had plenty of time. He had plenty of time to fight over the screen. And what you have to do is it's called chase and recover. And as we can see here, Joe Ingles gets a clean look at a three-point shot and knocks it down. And we're going to go into another sequence here. And this sequence right here is going to explain how confused Michael Porter Jr. gets on the defensive end. And we're going to watch how this defensive play develops. Same thing again. And this is the same principle. When you get screened and it looks like the Denver Nuggets are consistently running drop coverage, obviously you're going to run drop coverage with Rudy Gobert on the court. There's no need to switch or to play up on that ball screen if you're big, because Rudy Gobert is not going to shoot the three-point shot. What the big only needs to do is focus on the rim. What Michael Porter Jr. needs to focus on, he needs to focus on being able to not get screened. And that's actually something that coaches teach in practice. Don't allow the screener to screen you. All right, you got to be able to see the screen coming. I'm sure there are guys on the court calling that screen out before it even gets there. You have to do a better job of what? Fighting over the screen, because we're running what? Drop coverage. This is something that this is a mandatory in the NBA. You cannot go to your coach and say he set a really good screen. No, you have to learn how to fight your way over screens. You have to chase and recover. And then again, he does a poor job of what? He's giving lackluster effort on the chase. All right, and because he gives lackluster effort on the chase, he's putting Plumlee in a position where Plumlee now has to guard two people. He has to guard Ingles on the roll, on the pick and roll, and then he also has to guard Rudy Gobert on the roll. There's no way he can guard that. And where is Michael Porter Jr. in this particular play? He's still behind the play. He hasn't recovered, and now he allows the pick and roll to develop onto a single Denver big, and it's going to allow for an easy bucket for the Utah Jazz here. Now, Porter Jr. here again. The one thing that we teach here, and I'm going to rewind it just a little bit. The one thing that most NBA teams teach is denying the middle. denying in the middle of the court. So when we look at Michael Porter Jr.'s stance, his stance is opened up. He's going to allow the drive middle. Not only does he allow the drive middle, he's not even using his 6'10" frame to take away the shot after the fact. Let's watch his lackluster defensive effort here against a smaller opponent. Lackluster defensive effort, no contest on the shot, and you allowed your guy to attack middle. All right, you help his baseline. He's so multiple problems develop right there. Multiple problems. See, and these are things right here again. When you're a fan of the game, these are things that you overlook. When you're actually a student of the game, or if you're Mike Malone, these are the things that you have to take into account when you're trying to determine how many minutes can I play this guy. Because at the end of the day, he's starting to become an extreme liability on the defensive end of the court. Whether we want to admit it or not, it's just a fact of the matter. Again, we have to look at his stance. First, we're going to look at his stance. First, look at where the guard is on the court. We're going to identify where the guard is on the court. Okay. This is not Steph Curry we're talking about. This is not a Damian Lillard we're talking about. Why is Michael Porter Jr. a 6'10" big who can contest with his length? Why are you pressed up on a guard 8 feet beyond the three-point line? That's not a very smart. That's low defensive IQ, on top of the fact that he now has your legs all crossed up. All right. So he's rejected the screen. And we're going to watch Michael Porter's inability to stay in front of guards after he makes the blunder defensively by allowing the guard to pull him so far off the perimeter that he can no longer guard him because of the guard's speed. So now it just simply becomes a foot race to the rim. Porter Jr. is once again in a situation where he's doing what? He's chasing down a guard from behind. And in the NBA, if you're constantly chasing, you're going to be losing those battles because guys are too athletic. When you allow guys to get to the rim, a lot of times they're just going to get fouled or they're going to find ways to score. And so look, we see another situation here. And I can kind of tell what's going on without even hearing what's going on the court. Porter Jr. is definitely not talking, but he's in a situation defensively here where he makes an extremely bad mistake where he unintentionally screens his own player. I just want you to see this. Now we're gonna look. What is he doing? He needs to be talking. He's not talking with Jamal Murray. One, because Jamal Murray doesn't want to switch off Donovan Mitchell, who's probably been lights out that game. And what is Murray doing? You know, Porter Jr. does not know where he wants to be or how to make this switch happen. Simple communication will allow you to do this. All right, now we're going to watch how confused Porter Jr. looks on this potential switch right here. Porter Jr. looks lost. He spun himself around. He has his back to his man. All right, he causes Mitchell. Because he bumps Murray trying to cut across to guard Ingles, that gives Donovan Mitchell the angle to drive, and it looks as if he was able to get a pass off to the big, potentially for an easy shot. So now that we broke down the video, we've already broke down the video. Now we've seen with our own eyes how he struggles. Michael Porter Jr. plays in the NBA where he's constantly going to get screened. He's going to have to constantly deal with high pick and rolls. He's going to have to constantly deal with having to switch and communicate with other players on his team on these switches. That's something that he's not going to be able to avoid. This style of play in the NBA today is not changing anytime soon. And so now the video just kind of exposed some of the deficiencies that he's having. These deficiencies were the same with the Clippers series. They were the same with the Utah series. This is regardless of how well he played offensively. These deficiencies that he's had have always existed and have always been a major red flag to Mike Malone with regards to how much he can play Michael Porter Jr. So as fans, I know you guys see him make, especially early on in the bubble, you guys watch this man do some great things offensively against some inferior opponents. But again, when you're talking about playoff basketball, you have to look at more than just a player who can score the ball. You have to be able to get stops, especially against some of these elite teams. And if you constantly make boneheaded mistakes on defense, on top of the fact where you're not giving effort and energy even when you make mistakes, that's a combination that's going to have you seated where? It's going to have you seated on the bench. So what we're going to go to now is, as you can see right here, this is Michael Porter Jr. So what we're going to be tracking with Michael Porter Jr. is his playoff stats. Because again, I don't want you guys to think that I'm mixing his in-season stats, what he did beginning to. No, this is not bubble games. What I want to look at is all playoff stats. And these stats right here are going to amaze you. This is going to be the true indicator as to why Michael Porter Jr.'s minutes are so inconsistent. And it's also going to explain to you why a guy like PJ Dozier played more minutes in the fourth quarter than Michael Porter Jr. did. All right, so we're just going to scroll down, and what we're going to look at, we're just going to look at some advanced defensive analytics. Now you don't always want to rely on analytics. We went to the video. The video showed us one aspect of Michael Porter Jr.'s horrible defense. Now we're going to look at the numbers. The number that I really want to look at here is this number right here. Defensive field goal percentage. We're going to look at Michael Porter Jr.'s defensive field goal percentage. Okay, so overall, opponents guarded by Michael Porter Jr. have a 55.6 field goal percentage. That's extremely high. That's extremely high. All right, so when guarded by Michael Porter Jr., opponents have an over 50% chance of scoring. When we look at the three-point shot, when guarded by Michael Porter Jr., opponents shoot 40.9% from the three-point line. That's far above the NBA average. When we look at two-point shots, opponents shoot 63% from the field against Michael Porter Jr. with all two-point shots. That's extremely high. All right, now when we say less than 6 feet from the rim, opponents are shooting 64% on Michael Porter Jr. Less than 10 feet from the rim, they're shooting 68% against Michael Porter Jr. And more than 15 feet from the rim, they're shooting 40% on Michael Porter Jr. Everywhere on the court, whether it's on the interior, whether it's the mid-range, whether it's the three-point line, players are shooting far above their average in the playoffs when guarded by Michael Porter Jr. one-on-one. And it's not the numbers that just say this. There were rumors going around the NBA bubble as Michael Porter Jr. started to play more and more. There were rumors going around the NBA bubble that they were saying he's great on offense. All you have to do is go right back at him on the defensive end because he's going to allow you to score. All right? When you're giving up these higher field goal percentages based on your individual defense, you're almost unplayable. I'm surprised that Mike Malone is even playing him the minutes that he's playing, because this test tells me right here you're a walking bucket. People score on you whenever they want. This tells me right here that you're not giving any effort on the defensive end. And it's not just me saying it. I looked at the video. When we look at the video, look at his effort when he has to get over on screens. There's no effort. Look at his effort when he has to chase and recover. There is no effort chasing and recover. He's leaving his teammates high and dry when it comes to help defense. They're helping him on defense. He's not helping them by giving max effort. And so when you're trying to be a championship team, when you're trying to beat a team like the Lakers, the one thing that you can't have one of your best players giving a lackluster defensive effort, especially when you're the underdog. The Denver Nuggets did not get to this Western Conference Final matchup with the Lakers by giving a lackluster defensive effort. They actually all went out and they all gave effort. Now, I'm not saying play perfect defense. And I know Michael Porter Jr., with his youth, he's going to make mistakes on defense. But it's the effort. And when we look at guys like Caruso for the Lakers, he's not a highly skilled guy. He's not a very tall guy. He's not a very muscular guy. And he actually makes a lot of mistakes on defense. What does Caruso do to make up for that? He gives max effort on every single play. What do we see him doing? Diving for loose balls, trying to throw the ball off people, jumping into passing lanes, tipping passes, getting hands on the ball everywhere, all over the court. He's extremely active, and he's always talking on defense. This is why you can constantly play Caruso, even though some games he's missing shots, because he's always going to be a value on defense. We can look at guys like Pat Beverly, undersized, all right, makes a lot of gambles and mistakes on defense. How does he make up for it? He gives max effort. That's one thing in the NBA, and that's one thing in all levels of basketball that any coach loves to have. They love to have guys who give maximum effort. All right, and what we see from Michael Porter Jr., he's not giving much effort on the defensive end. And it's not just presenting problems for him, because a lot of people selfishly say you still play him. What it does is it puts people like Plumlee and Jokic and Millsap, it puts those guys into foul trouble. That's what it's so. There's a lot of other things that you really have to consider before you put him on the court. You got to make sure you have a lineup on the court that can supplement for his terrible defense. And then you also have to account for the fact that he's not always on offense. He's not always engaged. There's some games where he comes out and he's not engaged on offense. There's other games where he comes out and he looks like the next coming of Kevin Durant, because he's looking to shoot the ball with his length. He can shoot over people. He can get to the rim. His effort comes and goes. And until Michael Porter Jr. learns how to harness that and bring it every single game on both ends of the court, his playing time is always going to be consistent. So again, now I just wanted to break this down. I wanted to break it down this way because, again, you have a lot of people running around out here as if Mike Malone is doing something incorrect. Mike Malone is playing Michael Porter Jr. perfectly. There are no complaints. There are no complaints from NBA people. There are no complaints from anyone with any basketball knowledge about Michael Porter Jr.'s playing time. All right, you can say start him, but then you have to answer the question, well, how do we make up for the fact that he can't guard a pick and roll? How do we make up for the fact that he might get Jokic in foul trouble because he's going to have guards constantly attacking the rim? Like, how do you account for all of these things just because you want an extra 10 points from Michael Porter Jr.? See, this is called, remember the last couple videos, man. It's called being students of the game, y'all. It's not thinking this like we're not basketball dummies over here. All right, we think through this. We do it the right way. And so, Michael Porter Jr. is a great player. Michael Porter Jr. will be a great player. He's just not ready. All right? And just like you guys had recency bias with Damian Lillard, just like you guys had recency bias with Paul George because he has one great game. You know, just like a lot of you guys are having recency bias with Jimmy Butler. Let's slow down. Let's respect the fact that we're dealing with great players. And let's stop jumping to irrational conclusions that don't make any basketball sense whatsoever. Hey, but there we have it right there, man. That's going to be our breakdown of Michael Porter Jr. Again, I'm not one of those advocating for Michael Porter Jr. just to be thrust into the starting lineup because he's had a few good games outside of the bubble. I know there's people out there saying that he's the reason why they beat the Clippers. No, that's not actual. You know, that's not factual at all. He was a small piece, a small reason as to why he wasn't the main reason why. I mean, anybody who watched those games knows that Jokic and Murray were the two main reasons why they won that series, on top of the fact that you had guys like Gary Harris and Jeremy Grant really stepping up, playing some major roles in creating havoc for that LA Clipper defense. So again, let's stop the pressures, man. Let's stop trying to put all this pressure on these young guys. Let these guys develop. All right, Just like the 90s, and whenever we allow guys to develop, like Kobe started his career off on the bench coming off as a sixth man. It took him time to develop. You know, there's a lot of players, man. Not everybody can just be thrust right into the spotlight, especially a guy like Michael Porter Jr., who's dealt with major injuries. We're not just talking about minor injuries. He dealt with a back injury that put him out for 1 year in college. The same back injury kept him out for 1 year in the NBA. I mean, this man over the last 2 years has been sitting on the sidelines. So again, let's allow him time to develop, grow, learn the game, come back next year and be better. Because next year, you know, we don't know the situation with Will Barton. Will Will Barton be back? Will this team be the same as constructed? He may have the opportunity to be thrust into the starting lineup, but just by being fans and saying thrust him into the starting lineup now, again, that's the reason why we label you guys as fans. So, you guys, let me know what you think about Michael Porter Jr., man. Do you agree with the analytics? Do you agree with the stats? The stats show that he's atrocious defensively. The stats basically show that if you're getting guarded by Michael Porter Jr., you need to shoot the ball because field goal percentages against this man are through the roof. The video shows that this man does not give much effort on the defensive end and creates liabilities and problems for his teammates all over the court. Those are the facts of the matter. But you guys let me know what you think about it. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you think. Hit us up on Instagram or Twitter. And again, as I do at the end, just like I did with my last video, for all my people, all my fans who watch these entire videos, again, I want to give you the opportunity to enter a special giveaway. All right? If you enter the number 55 in the comment to any of our videos, just the number 55, you're going to get an entry. You're going to get an entry into next Friday's drawing for a PlayStation 5 pre-order bundle. A PlayStation 5 pre-order bundle. All right, so we just dropped a video a few hours ago. All right, well, I want to see how many people are watching the videos to the end there, because I want to start seeing these 55s in the comment. Because if it's only 155 in the comment, there's only one person in the drawing. I really want to see how many of you guys are watching these videos to the end. And then for the people that are engaging, watching these videos from start to finish, I'm going to reward you. I'm going to start rewarding you guys. So all of our giveaways, we're going to be talking about these giveaways at the end of the video. So if you want your entry, if you want to be one of the select few that have actually won prizes, and just check the comments. You know, we've given away prizes. We've given away things. There's fans, there's subscribers who've won so far. Right? I want you to be the next winner. So the only way you be the next winner, man, we need our real fans to step up. Get in those comments. All right, show your support. I want to see those 55s in the chat. But hey, FYF Sports, man, another great video. Make sure you be students of the game, man. Don't be fans. All right, you know, what do fans do? Fans buy tickets. Fans buy tickets to the game. FYF Sports, man. We out.